Hey, leaders. What if your entire school community truly came together to meet the social emotional needs of every student and built stronger academic and behavioral outcomes because of it? That's exactly what the team at James S McCormick School is doing, and we can't wait to dive into their story. Are you a leader who is navigating the nuances of leading collaborative response in your school or district? Are you unsure of what collaborative response is? Are you looking to understand the critical role leadership plays when establishing and refining a collaborative response approach?
Collaborative response began as a grassroots approach to focus on the needs of students through a framework of collaboration. That approach has grown to a movement that is training leadership and education.
Through the Leading Collaborative Response podcast, Kurtis and I share our own experiences of leading collaborative response and lessons learned as we continue to learn and gain insight through the experiences of working alongside others. We also have the opportunity to engage in conversations with school and divisional leaders implementing the framework in their own organizations.
We know great leaders build great teams because that is what every child deserves. Subscribe to the Leading Collaborative Response podcast and join the thousands of schools seeing success for students through intentional and focused collaborative efforts.
Welcome to another episode of Leading Collaborative Response. I'm Lorna Hewson, co-founder and lead learner of Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Kurtis Hewson. Today, we're super excited to be joined by two members from the team at J.S. McCormick School, a vibrant pre-K to grade 3 English and French immersion school in Lacombe, Alberta. We're excited to engage in this conversation with Melissa and Karen. However, we are going to refer to them at this point as Rogers and Weidner, just heads up for everyone. We really want to explore how they're embedding Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports into daily practices, deepening their team's understanding of executive functioning, and building a true village mindset to support every student's success. So let's jump in. And for those that are listening to the audio, you will not see that we are sporting Edmonton Oilers paraphernalia here today. We're central Alberta, but slightly north of Red Deer, which puts us into Edmonton Oilers country. And we're recording this in April, where the hopes are still very, very high. We're hoping when people are viewing and listening to this in May, that is still the case, that our beloved Edmonton Oilers are on their way to some great things this year.
Definitely crossing our fingers.
100%. All right, so we didn't get into this to talk NHL playoffs. We got in it to talk about collaborative response at J.S. McCormick. And the interesting thing is, this is right in our home community. We probably should have just had you over for breakfast and done this right from a couch, as you're right in our community. Melissa, for those that don't know, Rogers is our neighbor right across the street. We can walk out the door and throw a crab apple and hit her front door.
We actually had talked about coming together and just doing it together in the living room here.
All right, so why don't we start? Let's go to Rogers and Weidner. Just a brief introduction and your educational journey that's taking you up to this point.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, I'm Melissa Rogers. You're welcome to refer to me as Rogers as well. I'm in my first year as principal at J.S. McCormick School, and prior to that, I was the assistant principal for 2 years. And then prior to that, I was a phys ed specialist here. So I've been at JS, this is my 12th year, and I have also been at other schools. I've taught in Abbotsford at a private high school there, and then I've taught in Lethbridge at Winston Churchill High School. So I'm a graduate, a proud graduate of U of L, and I'm currently taking my master's at UBC in Indigenous education.
Awesome. And Weidner.
Hi, I'm Karen Weidner. Nobody calls me Karen, so we're going to go with Weidner today. I'm actually from Australia, so I did my degree in Australia in early childhood education, and I worked in Australia for a few years before meeting a Canadian and moving across the seas, and that landed me there at J.S. McCormick. And I've done lots of different roles, teaching probably, I think, pre-K all the way up to grade 3, every grade, and the inclusion coach at the school too. So I've been full-time inclusion for many years. Right now, I'm currently grade 2, 3, and then halftime inclusion coach, so supporting the team. So yeah, I did work a year at Terrace Ridge here in Lacombe too, but I've mainly been at JS McCormick, and I'm excited for this morning. So thanks for the invites.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. And Weidner and I had a chance to be able to work together for a couple of years, and that was fantastic being able to see all the amazing things that you do in JS McCormick Weidner and continue to do in your school. So exciting. So, hey, tell us a little bit about your school. Not everybody knows about JS McCormick. So, tell us a little bit about the demographics of the school.
Yeah, for sure. So we are a pre-kindergarten to grade 3 school. We're dual track, so English and French immersion. And this year we are about 475 students. So yeah, we have 55 staff this year, so 25 certified. Yeah, and it's a bustling building. We like to refer to it as the tiny human school. Just the energy is super contagious, and yeah, we just love being a part of this building and the journey to journey with our students and staff.
And I'd like to add to that too, just that we're fully inclusive. So all of our students are in every classroom. We don't have like pull-out program for specific students. So they're completely getting their programming within the each classroom too. And we're all about relationships first too. So if we're talking about the culture or what we believe in, we're all about relationships, connections. That's like the foundation of JS McCormick.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go to Weidner first here. When we've been working with Wolf Creek School Division for a long time around this collaborative response, back when it was referred to as a model, and it looked different then than it did now. But Weidner especially, what were some of your initial reflections when you first engaged in this work? Because you were one of the early champions within the school division. What appealed to you, and what did you see as some initial wins and early challenges when implementing collaborative response?
I thought you were going to call me an early guinea pig there for a minute.
It could apply.
That was a little of that.
Right? I actually was telling Rogers just this morning about, I remember the very first time we ran one in her office right there, where we all sat around together and division came in to watch. But you know what? I have journeyed for a long time. You're right. When we called it CRM back in the day. And honestly, I can say that I felt it was the first time that we came together as a large group to have a productive conversation, a conversation where I actually felt like we were going to make a difference and make things happen, versus sometimes, when you come together for a meeting and you feel like not everyone's maybe bought in. Mm-hmm. And some people are just there because it's a meeting, but I felt like we actually had an opportunity to all come together, some time that was embedded, set aside for everyone. And it felt good. It felt like, you know what, this is going to make a difference. And it proved, the more we did it, it proved it was making a difference. So the buy-in became bigger. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about for you, Melissa? I mean, you first engaged as a teacher, then as assistant principal, and now as principal. What were some things that initially appealed to you? And then we want to get into the weeds of what does it look like today at JS McCormick?
Absolutely. I can speak as far as when I was a teacher, because I was the phys ed specialist. I would be brought in more for, before it was key issues, I'd be brought in for certain students. Right? Like, what am I seeing in the gym when I'm teaching them and stuff? So going from that shift in the last 3 years to jumping fully in and having opportunities to work with the staff team on a different capacity has been an incredibly eye-opening experience for me, right? To see it on such a bigger scale and to just have, I don't know, just to see how productive the meetings are in supporting our students and our staff as well.
And
okay.
can I add to that, Kurtis? Sorry, just, when Rogers kind of talks about that individual piece at the beginning, where we used to kind of more focus on a student And now that shift to key issues now, I've noticed that's made a big difference. I'll be honest. I mean, I've always been, as the inclusion coach, a facilitator of those conversations, but you get an opportunity to gaze around and see who's checked in and who's not checked in those pieces. And I know teachers are always doing their best, but the reality is sometimes their to-do list is super, super long, and to keep their, but now the model has shifted. And I feel that, one teacher would be on, I don't want to call it the hot seat, but when it was kind of more student focused, it felt that way. They'd bring something up. And then it was like, even though we were asking coaching questions and being collaborative, it still felt like, well, I perceived that they felt like I have to list all the things I'm doing and what I'm not doing. Whereas now it's that key issue. Some people call it stretches, key issues, stretches, gaps, whatever you want to call it. There's so much buy-in. And when I'm coaching that piece, sometimes it does shift and we start to talk about someone, but because we have other structures like our intervention team meetings, then I'm able to say, as we're coaching them through, say, you know what, I feel that we need to shift this over so we can come back to key issue and not just have a conversation about a child. So I think that's been a big shift.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to add that piece in.
That's really great, because that is, of course, what we learned along the way too, is that when you are focusing in on one person or one student, you really do, and we use that word too, Weidner.
I'll forgive you.
About putting the teacher in the hot seat. And when we move to key issues, we just have that ability to be able to talk about an issue that many, many teachers are experiencing, many, many students are experiencing, and now we can share all of the ideas of what every individual teacher is using in their classroom.
Absolutely.
Such a powerful change.
So both of you were at the table when we first began the idea of, well, it's all about the collaborative team meeting. And we've found out since that actually that meeting is one layer of teams. And Weidner, you already referred to this of, no, this is a conversation we're going to shift to another. So I know within the school, there's multi-layers of team that are established, and we talk about 4 layers in each school. Can you kind of talk to us about what that looks like from your collaborative planning, i.e. grade level team meetings, to the collaborative team meetings, to the intervention team, and then into some of those more intensive one student at a time conversations? What do those look like at JS McCormick? When do they happen? Who's involved? Just lay it out. I know listeners and viewers are always interested in how people have set up those different layers of teams within their building, to understand that it's multifaceted and highly interconnected.
Yeah.
Before Rogers jumps in to talk about structure, and I'm presuming she's going to take it away. She's got her calendars memorized better than me. I just want to comment that the only reason we can build these structures and have these incredible structures is because we have what did you call it, Kurtis? You introduced me to this term. I'm blanking. Oh, vulnerability trust.
Yeah.
When you came a long, long time ago, you talked about our building having that, and it stuck for me. And I feel like without what we have at JS, we have an incredible culture. We have staff willing and not willing, wanting or are vulnerable. And I feel like we're able, because of that solid foundation, then we're able to structure to on that all those layers. But without that, it would be pretty tricky. So just, I know people listening, I think that is super important. Before you just make structures, you got to have that foundation. Mm-hmm. Right, Rogers, take it away with all the numbers and dates.
Yeah, no, that is essential in the foundation of running any of these meetings. So in terms of the practical, how we program for it, a lot of it is also given to us from our division office, right? Like in regards to how we're guided as the admin team, is we have 6 CTM days given to us for PD days. And so within those PD days, there's we meet with grade level teams individually. They're 75 minutes long, our meetings. And so we have each of those meetings at the start of the year. We start getting those grade levels to talk about what are their norms for their And so those are always reviewed prior to every CTM meeting. So we pull them up on the screen, we review the norms, and go through those. And so that is our CTM meetings. On that day as well, we embed grade level meeting time. And so that is something that was given to us this year from our division office. And so they recognize the importance of our teams coming together with grade levels to focus on a lot of common assessments, but also what's going on with the grade level team. And
So really that's that collaborative planning and the collaborative team meetings being able to exist on those days.
Yeah.
Yes. And I can speak to that because, of course, I'm also in the classroom teaching too. So I'm part of running the CTMs and also part of grade level meetings. And I find that often, I mean, it depends on the day and the timing, but often if you have, it happens both ways. If you have your CTM meeting and then you jump into your grade level, I find, which excites me, often there's a flow. So often when we're talking about key issues, and then we talk about, I mean, we always say we always have the experts around the table. Let's flush out what are we doing? But reality is sometimes we want to research. Part of our takeaway from the CTM is like, let's investigate this more. Let's dig into this deeper. Let's go back and see and bring it. So often we end up flowing that conversation to our grade level conversations with, hey, at CTM today, I noticed we were going to dig in more about initiation, for example, as executive functioning. So let's pull that apart more. Sometimes it leads into that. Or the flip side to that, you have a grade level, we have a conversation, and then it kind of comes up as a key issue on CTM because sometimes Roger's talked about grade levels, we sometimes blend them. So sometimes we'll do a K2 because of whatever reason. And because it's not student focused, it's key issue focused, you can flush out all kinds of things. You've got kids in grade 2 that are having the same concern in kindergarten. So then we flush it out there. So it's a super nice, it flows, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, doesn't matter. Yeah, which is that is new this year, grade level, and that connection on that day. And I think it's very effective.
Yeah.
So Weidner, is it still then the practice that you and admin are involved in all of the collaborative team meetings?
It is. You know what? We flipped. I feel like we started like that, super strong. And then we went, this was like, let's not age ourselves. What, 10 years ago? I don't remember how long ago it was. A long time ago. And so it started like that. But then you know how time and budgeting and things. So then we tried to kind of stretch it a bit where they'd facilitate. And you know what? I'm not saying this is a cut to anyone. They're just not as powerful. So I don't attend as the inclusion coach. I don't get to attend the grade 3 meeting. Well, then what I'm getting is a whole bunch of emails, questions after. I have to do mini meetings all over the building. So it is way more powerful as a full leadership, including our social worker, our family school liaison worker. She's at the table. The educational assistant that facilitates our hub programming, which is our social and emotional support throughout, she attends the meeting. So we're having the conversation right then and there. I'm not saying we don't have action items because we're action based, but it's not, hey, you wanted that meeting, can I ask you? So yeah, we are at everyone. They're busy days. We're exhausted by the end. However, it is so worth it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Okay, so then Rogers, lead us into these other layers. Karen's mentioned a hub meeting. We've heard an intervention team meeting that's happening. What are those? When do they happen?
For sure. So in August, last August, let's say, for example, we met together to schedule in a weekly intervention team meeting. And so throughout the year, basically, we have a document that tracks which students are potentially bubbling up or student name comes forward, like Weidner said, at a CTM meeting that we need to take to more of a one-on-one conversation with the teacher and the EA that supports. So at our intervention team meetings, right now, we meet on Tuesdays for an hour. We provide release time for the teacher and for the EA as well to be at the table. So it's myself, our assistant principal, Casey Oler-King, Weidner, and our FSLW as well at that table. And so we run at the same, focusing on celebrations, and then we look at stretches and then how to best support. So that's intervention team meetings. Yeah.
And I can jump in for people that are listening in how we kind of keep tracking that. So we have a document.
We'll be right back to continue this episode. I often hear leaders remark that collaborative time is established for teams in their schools, but they are looking for ways to ensure that time is meaningful and focused. Often, the first reaction is a perceived need to be consistently present to help provide leadership and support. However, when effectively established, focus for the time can be accomplished without the need for a leader to micromanage or devalue the professionalism of those around the table. Join me for the online workshop, Creating Focus for Collaborative Planning Without Micromanaging Your Teams, part of our Supporting Collaborative Response series. This on-demand workshop, I will share why focus for collaborative planning is critical and how it can be accomplished without a leader needing to be consistently setting the agenda or needing to be consistently involved. Purchase the workshop and you'll also have the ability to replay all or any portion of the workshop as you wish. I will also be sharing numerous resources, templates, and samples to help support your team planning. Register today to learn more about this critical collaborative structure integral within a school's collaborative response. And now back to our conversation.
So they can come forward from CTMs like Rogers said. However, obviously conversations through observations in the classroom, we can bring names forward too to any of the leadership team. And then I just have a document, and then it's just a matter of always having conversation. So just because your name gets put on this state, we don't just go down in order. It's like, okay, how's this? Okay, that kid's settled. Maybe this kid's bubbling, we'll pull them forward to IT. So it's a constant conversation. Sometimes we trump 5 names and bring a kid instantly the following week. Mm-hmm. And then in some of the kids' situations, they are from large collaborative teams. So they might be a couple of teachers and there might be 4 or 5 educational assistants within that room. So it's just a matter of covering and working out and making mass plans to ensure that we try to get everyone. Sometimes it can't work, but as many people as possible involved with that kid at that table for the intervention team conversation.
But I imagine then that helps tremendously with the focus in your collaborative team meetings, where if somebody says, can we talk about David? And you go, whoa, we're already, there's a conversation already going on. Let's focus in on a key issue that we're not already discussing in that in that intervention team.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. And sometimes David keeps bubbling at the CTM, and then I find my role as the facilitator and my personality, they can just deal with me saying, hey, remember, or don't worry, we've got you. We're going to, you know what I mean? And you be part of that conversation and we'll connect in, because you need to the staff need to feel like heard and listened to too, because sometimes I know if they've never been to an IT meeting, an intervention team meeting, they don't actually realize the power of them. So then they're like, we finally come together for CTM. I've been waiting for a few weeks to talk about David. And now you're going, hey, next time, you know what I mean? So it's like trying to validate and like, hey, we've got you, but we promise we will do this. And we stay true, even though we sometimes get a long list, we do what we can to shuffle and make it happen.
Okay, so then back to Rogers. What other structures do you have in place? We've got grade level team plannings, collaborative team meetings, intervention teams.
Yeah. Sometimes from the intervention team meetings, things are flushed out and we need to take it to a case conference meeting as well, right? Where we're bringing other people, such as Ed Psych, to the table, or even, different, I don't know, maybe Weidner, you can speak to this a little bit more, but different stakeholders that work with our students. So go ahead. Okay, sorry. So sometimes when I'll just give you an example. Sometimes we'll have an intervention team meeting and we're feeling like we need more data, for example, and we don't have what we need. So then someone like myself who's B-level trained, I might run a CEFI, for example, executive function B-level assessment, and then we would gather data, and then maybe I'm having a conversation with the family
the family's taking that information to a specialist, or it might lead to maybe we need an occupational therapist. And so those bigger conversations where it's maybe family or specialist, or that's one piece of data that leads to something else that now we're calling on division for something. So that would be right at the top there.
Yeah.
But as we know, I find because of incredible things like CTMs and tier one in the class, you know what I mean? I find that there's a reason it's a pyramid. I feel like before we had these conversations, we'd sometimes go to that top quite fast but now we're able to have these. It's like we don't have as many going to the top, if that makes sense. It's like we're sifting more and more out by these really good conversations.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it is about being able to have the right students with the right team, and not before we're ready, because there's so much that can happen in the classroom before we start accessing those external supports. And we know that if we don't have those structures in place, the external supports or even the supports across the school become flooded.
The interesting thing is whenever we introduce this work to a new school or a division, we say we're going to reduce the number of meetings by adding one more, and you always get that dazed look of, what do you mean? That makes no sense at all. But then you have someone like yourselves who have been working at this for years who can go, oh yeah, that absolutely is what happens.
So Weidner, you had mentioned before about when you get to that place where you're not sure about a child, then you dig into that data and evidence. You start to look at, what assessments have we done and what assessments can give us additional information. Love for you guys to talk a little bit about what does data and evidence look like in the conversations that you're having in terms of, at that collaborative planning level, at that grade level, at that collaborative team level, and of course you've already spoken to that intervention level.
And I'm going to add one more level to this for our listeners and viewers. The last number of years, and I assume we're going to get to this a little bit further around when we talk about continuum of supports, but you've really dug into utilizing your collaborative response structures to look at executive functioning specifically. And we always say that pick an area, a priority area that you're going to then use the structures and the processes to move forward. So from that executive functioning lens, love to jump into the question Lorna posed about the data and evidence.
Okay, so first of all, for people that are listening, I know when we first shifted to executive functioning, it does kind of challenge you in the sense of if we did literacy, it's like, okay, some people are doing core phonics data and F&P and this and that, and you feel like you've got a lot more. I want to call them standardized or A-level assessments. And it's like, how are we going to do executive functioning? So I do find that a lot of our data tends to be observations, anecdotal notes, like a simple thing like a tally mark. And I'll give you an example. A teacher might talk to me about a child not initiating, say, for example, and it might feel like they don't initiate anything all day long. So it's like, let's gather some data around that, how many times that's happening. What subjects? Is it non-academic? Is it academic? So pulling out some of those ABC charts, pulling out when are the behaviors happening, and using that data and gathering. And then sometimes it can be, there is an executive functioning, and I'm blanking. I think is it Peggy Dawson, her executive functioning. She's got a book that has a simple A-level in executive functioning checklist you can do on a child. I just say do on a child, but collect the data from the child. The family can even fill it out for you. And so we use that data because sometimes, depending on the time of the year, it seems like a child, for example, with social emotional outbursts, emotional regulation as their gap. It feels like sometimes it's happening 50 times a day, but when you start to collect the data, it's actually only 4 times, right? Sometimes it feels like 4 times, and actually the child is 20. You know what I mean? So collecting data, anecdotal notes, taking inventories on kids. I mean, it's not reading running records, which if your focus was literacy, for example, and then pulling all that data apart and putting in programming. And as I said, if we need to get up the top, typically we use the CEFI,
Yeah.
which is the B-level standardized assessment. And we do find that is a very good assessment for what we need. It usually just puts percentile rankings for us, which is what we knew in the anecdotal notes, if that made sense.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
reinforces.
Like it's like, okay, we knew this, but now this is actually concrete evidence, especially if we have families wanting to pursue, doctors and things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel
So,
that answered that.
yeah.
There's one other thing that we do at the start of the year, and that's having each teacher do a classroom profile and say, so I believe it's an expectation of our division as well. And so teachers take the time to fill out what does their class family look like per se. What are some of they break down on the bottom of the chart, like what are some of the individual needs of certain students, right? And so it really helps frame that mindset of this is my family this year, and what will I be working with, and how can I meet the needs of my students?
And that's built from Shelley Moore's work. So, and Lorna, you would remember that. I think that was when you were in division, we started digging that apart. So using some of those inventory pieces, classroom profiles is exactly what Rogers is talking about. So that sometimes you can build like, okay, this is what it is looking like. So then these are our tier 1 things that we need to put in place because our class looks like they all struggle with organization, for example. So what is that tier, right? So that the Shelley Moore work is used for that.
So
yeah, that's so great.
Yeah, and I know then through your collaborative team meetings also becomes a way for you to collect some data for both of you. What have been some of the key issues that have surfaced during those collaborative team meetings that again have given you some further data to be able to respond to?
You bet. I took some time to go through our recording throughout the school year this year. The ones that really surfaced as far as our key issues with executive functioning are things like task avoidance, impulse control, sensory seeking, belonging, social connections, inhibition, and working memory as well. So those are the things that when I go through, those are the things that keep repeating as I'm going through it. And but it's also neat because when we are in those CTM meetings and it's already been a key issue that's surfaced, often Weidner will pause me and just say, hey, go back through our notes. We have a whole bunch of examples of things you can try with this student.
Yeah.
And so we'll go back and basically share, or I'll read off what's already been done potentially by another grade level meeting, right? So some of these staff are sitting in on that. So so those would be the key issues that have been surfacing around.
So the idea could be that a grade 2 team talked about in October a key issue around sustained attention, for instance, and now we're a grade 1 team dealing with that same thing in March. Well, let's bring up what the grade 2s were talking about a few months ago.
Which is another reason why it's important for leadership to be involved so that you have that scope of what everyone has been talking about.
And that's exactly what happens. I usually tap Rogers on the shoulder and I'm like, hey, can you scroll back quickly? I feel like I'm remembering something. And then sometimes what we've been doing, which is new this year, out of initiation came a whole conversation about how a kid's not initiating because we're not actually taking into consideration their what they're interested in, like what we called it sparking them. So what could we be doing more to spark them? Is it that they don't have initiation or we're not sparking them? So we actually started a doc for the entire school. It flushed out of a grade 3 meeting, but we explained to the other grades, this is why we're doing this. This came out of initiation or sustained attention, because some kids are only sustaining on things they love. And what are things that you're doing in your classroom to spark learning and joys of learning? And then that became from a CTM, from a key issue, all of a sudden into a whole school collaborative doc now where, we've got robotics or cooking so it was really powerful.
Oh, that's so cool. You know, there are some schools that, just as you're talking about scrolling back in your notes and trying to find that place where you had that conversation, there are some schools that actually have a different doc after they've had their meeting and they keep it in their, recorded their notes. Then they just have a really simple template where they copy and paste the key issue and copy all the ideas from that conversation. And then they name that doc the key issue and then put it in a shared folder across the whole school so that it's super easy to access.
Not just in a meeting, but if I'm a teacher
Anytime.
struggling with this on a Thursday morning, I can
Yeah.
jump. Yeah.
And then it's like there's no teachers' names, there's no student names on that, but it could be sensory seeking is the name of the doc, and then all the ideas that you've gathered so far. And then if it comes up again, you can review those ideas and then add to it. Some people will even post those in their staff room because it becomes a quick reminder of, all the conversations that we've had.
So I'm interested because Lorna and I, again, had the privilege of coming in to work with your staff team. It was a couple of years ago, I think,
Yeah.
back in 2023, to get the initial start of, well, if we're focusing around executive functioning, and I think that was the first year where you had really said, this is something
This
that
is
we
our
are
priority.
putting a direct attention to. Well, then let's start with what people already know and do. And we started developing that continuum. And just for those that are listening and viewing, one of the things that we did, which was really interesting, is we gave everyone articles to read ahead of time to then help inform when they started to put down so what do we do when a student struggles with executive functioning, that there was a bit of a base to that as well. I would love to hear where that has gone since, what that continuum has looked like, and how it's helped support, especially Weidner, as you said, the classroom, the tier 1 and tier 2 practices across the school.
Yeah.
Before we jump on you coming in this round, can we have a conversation quickly?
Yeah.
Celebrating. Oh, I wanted to comment. Rogers and I were talking about you coming in just a couple of years ago, but do you remember? I'm sure you remember because you don't forget us. You came in a lot. You came in a long time ago too, Kurtis. Do you remember
I
that?
do.
And worked with us just on that. You actually sat at the back of our CTMs
I remember.
and well, there were CRMs at the time and took data and information, like just made notes and things. And I remember met with our leadership team and provided us with written notes of this is going well and this is what you could do. And that was super powerful. I mean, coming in and doing executive functioning was too, but I just wanted to make note of that because I said to Rogers, I remember when it was very new when you came in and worked with us when I don't want to say we didn't know what we were doing, but it was really new. So
At the
I
beginning.
don't know, right? I don't know if listeners have an opportunity or you even still do that for people.
Oh, we
Oh,
do.
yeah.
You do? Okay, because I just remember guiding us because it can be a little bit scary at the beginning when I know it sounds like you come in and say, oh, it's just one more meeting, but it's like, okay, how does this actually look? But
Yeah.
you were so I never felt judged. I felt super supportive. I felt really good. So I just wanted to make note of that because I was super excited then to have you back in a different capacity. Because when you did the executive functioning, you actually both facilitated, the entire staff. I mean, you did when you came a few years ago. I remember at the end, you sat us in a circle in the gym, talk about impacting people. That's when you used that term vulnerability trust
Yeah.
that stuck with our school for a very long time. So,
Oh, that's
but yeah,
outstanding.
let's talk about executive functioning, Rogers. Sorry, took it away there for a while.
No, that's awesome, Weidner.
Yeah. No, I can speak a little bit to the process of when you came in, and it was, I think, February of 2023. And I think for me, that was a time that I was really able to jump into it, right? Because I was new to admin, and just to be able to see the bigger picture of how to collectively bring your staff together, for their voices to be heard as well. And it's not just a top down, this is what we're doing, this is why we've chosen it. It was a process that you guided us through, for staff to write on sticky notes. I remember so many of those sticky notes, right? And then we went through the process of, do we believe this to be a tier 1 support, 2, 3, and 4 supports, right? And so we really broke it down. But I think staff having that opportunity to put their thoughts down and be a part of that process really brought our team together to understand that we're in this together, and the primary reason is to support the needs of our students.
I can remember too, just the sense of, I don't know if pride is the right word or excitement of, man, look at all the sticky notes that we have, which is really just verifying there's a lot of things we're already doing in this building. Now we're just naming it and organizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely am grateful to step into a school that has been so strong in their CTM processes. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that piece, Weidner, or I can speak to.
I would just add when I think you Lorna, or I can't remember, Kurtis asked, like, how do we use that today? We could talk more about the day that you came in and supported us to build that.
We'll be right back to continue this episode.
I know for anyone coordinating services and supports for students, it can be a struggle to keep track of and monitor what is happening for students across the school. What if there was an easy way to visually organize students while continuously updating what is in place for their success and ongoing growth? By establishing visual boards with easy access to a comprehensive student profile, organization and tracking concerns become a thing of the past. Start your free trial now to experience the power of WeCollab.
And now back to our conversation.
We could talk more about the day that you came in and supported us to build that, in the sticky notes, and then Roger's writing it up into it and all those pieces. But do know that that pyramid is still, like, when we go to CTMs, we go to ITs, we still have our norms and we still have our pyramids, and we get busy, and I get busy as a teacher inclusion coach, and sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, actually, what's on that again? Because you as you said about why you posted in the staff room, for example, because sometimes it's simply as, hang on a second, I haven't done that. It's just because reality is teaching us busy, and sometimes we forget about these tier one, right? So, but that's why it's important to have a pyramid that you can have a look at, and it's not looked at, as Roger said, as like, hey, what are you doing on this? It's like, hey, this is how we support. This is where we can go. This is what we could do. So lots of classroom teachers have them stuck to their board near their computer, for example, as a quick look. And I mean, I know there's links too, and but it's still very visual in our school. We still use that pyramid.
Awesome.
Which is what we always hope will happen, because really it is powerful because they built it themselves.
Yeah, have ownership. And we'll make sure, for those listening, watching, we have a copy of J.S. McCormick's Executive Functioning Continuum. We'll put it into the show notes as well for you to be able to take a look. So we have some questions we always love asking guests that come on who've been engaging in the collaborative response work in their school, and in your case, through multiple iterations and over a number of years. Love for you to finish this statement. As a result of collaborative response, we have seen. How would you go about, and whoever wants to jump in first on that?
Yeah. I would love to speak to the celebration piece. I think that when we start every meeting with celebrations, and we're using it in all meetings now, it's just like, how can we celebrate what's going on in our building? But to hear the teachers and the support staff start with celebrations, it's every meeting, it's just, it's so powerful, right? To sit around a table and hear people speaking amazing things about what our students are doing, right? It really sets the tone for every meeting. And just, I don't know, there's just a mindset shift that takes place when you celebrate. So for me, that is, I would believe, to be one of the most powerful things.
How about for you, Weidner? As a result of collaborative response, we have seen. How would you finish that?
Say it one more time for me.
Yeah, as a result of collaborative response, we have seen.
Teachers and support staff feel more confident, more validated, more willing to take risks. They felt heard, and part of the process. I have seen over the years, and as I said, we didn't want to age me, but a lot of years doing this work, that through collaborative response, which is a coaching model, I believe we're coaching teachers able to build capacity. I feel like we've built capacity in our staff. Because now when we have conversations, it's simply like, do you remember when, in CTM, oh yeah, that student, I remember I used to, and it's a collaborative. So I feel like we've built capacity. I'm not saying I'm not busy still, but I feel like the teachers, they've always had it, but I think it's given them a structure where they really feel like they have it. Like they walk away. I can't speak for everyone, but you hear conversation down the hallway and they're implementing. It's making a difference. They're having conversations. What I've seen come from CTM is teachers putting actions in place, feeling like I get emails or texts, or when I go in the classroom, they're like, hey, remember CTM? We talked about building a visual schedule. Come check this out, Weidner. It's really working. So I feel like I don't know if empower is the right word, but come on, you guys have better words on a Sunday morning for me. But you know what I mean? It's making a difference in how they see what they're doing, their confidence, that's how I feel like CTM has changed our building. And it's a capacity piece. I guess it's team. It's not an admin going and saying, do this or try this. It's all of us saying, hey, and teachers coaching teachers. And
which is
that was
exactly
a long-winded way.
Which is exactly like we always say to people, think about and break down the two words, collaborative and response. Like when you're truly collaborative, you're leaning on others, you're interdependent, but it's all about how could we respond? What could we do? And, when you have that empowerment, as you say, or that efficacy that's established for people to say, okay, we got this, rather than, well, there's not much we can do until the division gives us more funds or the parents start sending better kids to school. Like those are all the things that you hear when you don't have that kind of capacity, as you say, Weidner built.
And we often see the power of collaborative response really living in a school when the conversations do start taking place in the hallway or in the staff room around how we're supporting students, not just, about what you're doing this weekend. Like we like to hear those do, but that it is carrying out beyond the physical meetings that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the impact is that, there is true demand on teachers. Educate, even support staff too. It's like a busy job. And when we know we've got each other's back and we can do this together, and we are being collaborative and we are being responsive and we are being action-based, and we are saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? And we believe, like we always talk about, Ross Green will say at the meetings, if kids do well, if they can, what are we missing? It lightens everyone's work. And it feels like you're not isolated, and it feels like you've got this. And I feel when you walk into JS, you can feel that in the air. And we have new staff that come and join our team, like teachers, and they say there's just a feel about that. And I think a lot of it is that it's that collaborative, it's that vulnerability piece. We've got these kids. We're not saying it's all easy.
No.
It is, right? It's exhausting. There's mornings when I text Rogers and say, are we really doing a CTM day today? He says, saddle up, Weidner, saddle up, because she knows in 6 hours, I'm going to be truly thankful, because what we can do on a CTM day in 6 hours would take one person weeks to connect in and go and do our thing. So even though, on a -40 winter, when I'm thinking my bed sounds better in coffee, they are powerful. They are powerful. And I always go to Rogers at the end of the day and say, Thanks for telling me to saddle up. It was worth it again. It was worth it again. So, and what you said, Kurtis, at the beginning there, when you go to staff and say, or new schools and say, add one more meeting to take away, and they're like, huh, how are we adding? It's true. It's exactly it's exactly. I mean, I've walked this work for 10, I don't know how many years, 10?
Yeah,
8?
at least. Yeah.
It's been,
It
probably
is,
10.
yeah, it is. It does work.
Yeah.
Okay, so Weidner, and you're the perfect person to start this next one off. And it's in the spirit of, if you knew then what you know now, what advice would you give 10 years ago, Weidner? What advice would you give your past self in relation to this collaborative response work?
Didn't
And
I
that's
just
usually
answer
the
that?
face we get when we ask that question.
It's always a tricky.
Yeah, I know. You know what? It would be trust in this, like, you know, how change, I mean, I don't mind change, to be honest, but it can be scary. So
Yeah.
it's trust in this system. At the beginning, I remember conversations. I didn't even hear what and how and collaborative and the acronyms and the C. You know what I mean? It's like just trust and lean on each other. And actually, you know what? If I could talk to myself, like the journey's going to be good. I guess the journey, like it has like it's the relationships. And I'm just trying to think. The one thing I would tell myself, the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to be vulnerable. I won't get emotional here. I'll try not to, but I feel like the collaborative response model has really opened up that. And if people could, I could tell myself that, but the journey, like I was always connected, but I feel really connected. Those conversations we have at IT, for example, that layer, those are not always easy.
No.
There is often emotion around that. And it's connected the staff too. I think we're responding to kids' needs, we're action-based, but I feel like collaborative response model actually connects staff on a level that if I could, I would have never have known that 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, us neither.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, you just connect on a level that on all those, you see people in a different way. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
How about for you, Rogers?
I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways that I've learned in this is taking time to listen, right? Like as those meetings are going on, and just is seeking to understand what people are trying to say, right? And so listening and knowing that as an administrator, the answers, like, they don't have to come from me.
No.
Right? Most times they don't. Like it's the team working together. And you just see the wisdoms in the room already, right? And that's when you see those moments. Like you can just see, when you give a little kid a compliment, it's just like everything just rises. As an administrator, you see the same thing happen with your staff.
Yeah.
I think that to me is powerful, right? Just building leader capacity within your own building. So
yeah,
just listening.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, the one thing, sorry, Rogers, I just want to jump on what she said there. One thing when we always start our meetings, we always make that comment to the staff that the expertise are right around the table here. We are going to draw from this table right here. Like you like all the ideas are right here. And just reminding them of that every time we start our meetings, that we're not shooting for the moon. We've got each other right here. Let's lean on each other and, share what you're doing. And you can see staff share something that maybe they've perceived as it's not a big deal. This is just something I do, and they maybe don't want to share. And then they share, and people are like, I've never even thought of that.
Yeah.
That's super
genius.
Cool. Right? Yeah. And so that what Rogers is saying, that building up of staff and drawing, because reality is the expertise is around that table. They are the ones in their classroom with those kids all day long. And so as much as they're just across the hallway, you know how it rolls. You don't necessarily get there because you're so busy. So yeah, drawing on and seeing them leaning on each other is huge because they are the experts.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been such a great conversation. And I know for anyone that's listening, the time will have passed, but we can share that we're super excited to have you share further the J.S. McCormick journey at our retreat that is happening in just a few days from now. So if people did have questions or wanted to find out more of the great work that's happening at J.S. McCormick, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I would say email.
Okay.
Email. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We will include that in show notes then.
Well, I cannot tell you how many times I have had goosebumps in the last hour. Just all of the things that both of you have shared and the how impactful collaborative response has been to both your students and to your staff. And we love that you have come to share your story and your journey. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity and trusting in us and yeah, inviting us to do something that is this is my very first podcast. I don't know about Rogers. Maybe she does this all the time,
Oh,
but
this is a weekend experience for
yeah.
us.
So just, people that are listening, if you have this opportunity to connect in with the Hewsons and I'd take it, run with it, run with it. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
Wishing you all the best.
Yeah.
This is a conversation I've been looking forward to
I
for quite a
know.
while. Not only our relationship with Melissa, not just through the school, but as our next door neighbor that we get the chance to connect with often, but we've both enjoyed working with Weidner
Oh
for
my goodness,
about a
yeah.
decade. And for those that are listening, watching, if you didn't get it from the response, the first time I came in to observe a meeting, powerful facilitator. She was fantastic at keeping the conversation going, directing, turning it back with questions. Powerful, powerful facilitator. She mentioned that CTM feedback process. We will include that in the show notes because it is a great way to get some feedback, and we really structure those to be all about celebrating and providing next steps. It's not evaluative, it's not somebody judging what's happening, it's how to help you move forward. So, what do you take away as some key learnings from this conversation?
Yeah, so there are so many things. And as I mentioned, I had goosebumps the whole time they were talking because they are so incredibly passionate about their students and their staff. And actually, I've been in that building a number of times, and every time you walk in, you can feel it, not just from the office, but across the entire school.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes because of the passion that they have for their students. And that's what Weidner was talking about at the very beginning of that building that level of trust and vulnerability.
Yeah,
and
came
that
through.
that comes through that distributed, what we would call distributed coaching, through collaborative response. And Weidner has really captured that idea of this is all about coaching each other and helping each
Yeah.
other and creating a system of supports, not just for students, but for all of our staff too.
Well, and I love that connection because that's been one of our key learnings over probably the last
Yeah.
5 years of this was always established as a way to respond to the needs
For
of students.
yeah.
But just like Weidner had said, we've learned the same thing of it's a powerful framework for staff connections and nobody feeling isolated. I loved their reminder of just keep remembering the wisdom's in the room.
Yeah.
And I've been
Yeah.
thinking about that a lot lately. The idea that if let's say Weidner as the inclusion coach is seen as the source of all strategies, all knowledge, well, then you don't need a collaborative structure if you've got one person that has all the answers. But for her to say, no, 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 it doesn't reside with this individual or with this role, it's in the room.
Yeah.
How do we leverage the room
Mhm.
to to determine where to go.
But that doesn't just happen.
No, no.
That happens through the structures and processes that are intentionally set up in that school to make that happen, to make
Absolutely.
it available that we can access everyone's expertise.
I would love to reinforce, and we see this over and over and over again, that idea that Weidner was giving her past self advice of trust the process.
Yeah.
There's two things that we can share, and one is just start, get going on the structures and processes related to collaborative response. It will grow and build as you go, and trust the process. It's a messy process. It's not one with a clear, linear, step-by-step path. She even mentioned the messiness to it, but trust the process that you will see these kinds of results and the capacity being built across the school through structures and processes.
And both Rogers and Weidner both said that, teaching is hard.
Yeah.
And it's not like all of these things are going to make life easier, better. We're going to attend to more needs. We're going to help each other, but it's still hard. It's still difficult and it's still messy. And I just love that Weidner talked about, remember that this journey is going to be good.
Yeah.
Engage in it. This journey is going to be good.
All right. So with that, we mentioned that they will be presenting at our collaborative response retreat. When this airs, that will have already happened at the beginning of May, but this happens every year.
Yeah.
So check it out at the beginning of May in Lacombe, Alberta. We bring schools and school leaders together to learn from one another, to network, to hear one another's stories, to learn, because at that event, we again encapsulate the idea of the wisdom is in the room, not at the front of the room.
Yeah.
So really encourage you to check that out if wanting to learn more about collaborative response or to enhance and extend the processes happening in your school. As always, reach out if you have questions, if you have guests to suggest, if you'd like to come on and share your collaborative response story. We would love to have you involved in that. Like, share, subscribe, and we're really excited to be able to continue to engage in conversations with schools and divisions, districts doing amazing work to collaboratively respond to the needs of their students. With that, we're wishing you all the best.
See you soon.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity and leading collaborative response in your context.